Good afternoon, all. I see that Councillor Melnick has rejoined us. Thank you for that. Welcome all. I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for October 18th, 2022. The time is 1:30 p.m. and it has been brought to our attention by Councillor Hall that today marks, in fact, the 1-year anniversary of the last election. So 1 year in these seats for all of us. And the 33rd anniversary of the birth of my youngest son. Not that that matters to anybody else. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Councillor Waxer.
Yes, I wondered if I could add 6.2 cemetery bylaw.
Thank you for that. Councillor Waxer, is there anything else? Apologies, my agenda just disappeared. However, we can carry on as I try and find it. Technically, we have been not necessarily following our procedural bylaws, so I will ask first for a motion to amend today's agenda with the addition of item 6.2, discussion about the cemetery bylaw. Councillor Waxer, I'll assume that's your motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And I would then ask for a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended. Councillor Keller-Harampy, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have two sets of minutes before us for approval today. First, the regular meeting minutes of October 4th, 2022. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If there are not, might I have a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the October 4th, 2022 regular meeting as presented? Councillor Wilson, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting from October 11th, 2022. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I failed to look for you last time, Councillor Melnick, but I hope that I didn't miss a raised hand, but you have my attention now with respect to the October 11th minutes.
Thank you. How is audio is fine?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. The only correction to the minutes would be on page 7. I attended the seniors community conversations in place of Councillor Waxer as opposed to Councillor Keller-Harampy. And that's the only change that I see to those minutes.
Thank you for that. That shall be noted. If there are no other changes, might I have a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the October 11th, 2022 committee meeting with the noted change from Councillor, was it Councillor Waxer to Councillor Keller-Harampy? Councillor Hall is prepared to make that motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, correspondence. There is nothing on the agenda. I take it nothing has come in that requires council's attention today. So we can move to agenda item 5, delegations, and again, nobody is scheduled to appear before us, which allows us to move to agenda item 6, new business, 6.1, outdoor recreation facilities policy. And I'm going to assume perhaps that Director Reed, you are here to address that today, so the mic is yours.
Indeed, thank you, Your Worship and Council. So the recommendation before Council is that Council rescind policy D014, municipal field use policy, and policy D015, outdoor skating surface policy, and approve policy D114, outdoor recreation facilities policy as presented. And this comes, of course, from recommendation of committee last week. We believe that we captured all of the what's the word I'm looking for, amendments that were requested by council. And so you see before you a more fleshed out outdoor recreation facilities policy, including more, as we were to say, meat on the bones of what the policy is for, the scope of the policy, as well as clarity on who does what. And of course, I'm open to any questions or suggestions.
Thank you for that, Director Reed. Councillor Waxer.
I wondered about the section 3 standards. I read it and reread it and found it difficult to understand. And I would propose that that section start with that municipal outdoor recreation facilities are maintained in a reasonably safe condition, both for the protection of the public and to mitigate liability to the municipality to the extent possible. I think the beginning of the sentence makes it very confusing to read, and I would like clarity.
And Your Worship, through to Councillor Waxer, I appreciate that that wording is clunky, and that's a reflection of me trying to combine older policies into new wording. And your suggestion is actually excellent. It mimics more of our sort of equity, diversity, inclusion guidelines about language and clarity. So I appreciate that amendment and certainly would support it with the council with this. And then I perhaps should add that the intent of that standard is that we would maintain our outdoor recreation facilities in a reasonably safe condition for the protection of the public and to mitigate liability to the extent possible. So that is the sentence of the action of that concept. So, or that section rather, and the, extra words at the beginning do not serve us any purpose. And so the intent is met by the suggestion.
Just for my own clarity, did I understand this suggestion, Councillor Waxer, to eliminate the words preceding to ensure that first phrase, just eliminate that?
That, along with to outline procedures to be followed to ensure that. Yeah, that I would take all of that out.
If you could read me the section 3 as you conceive it to be.
That municipal outdoor recreation facilities are maintained in a reasonably safe condition, both for the protection of the public and to mitigate liability to the municipality to the extent possible.
Understood. Thank you. Any other discussion on that? I might suggest that if we shorten it to begin that way, there could be a concluding phrase or sentence, such standards to be contained in, what do we call it? The yes.
Your Worship, thank you very much, and through the rest of the council. So this standard is that we will keep our facilities at the standard of reasonably safe, protection of the public, mitigate our risk. This is not the standard of how the ice would be maintained. So For administrative purposes, the overarching standard is that the facilities will be safe and usable. And so for us, this works. And then the specifics of when it's a toboggan hill, it looks like this. When it's an ice rink, it looks like this. When it's a skate park, it looks like this. That would all be, it is all contained to be contained in the administrative procedure. So this standard as it's written works for us, if council is acceptable of that clarity.
I will get to that shortly. Do you see a need to reference the fact that the standards will be in the procedures rather than in the policy?
And so, your worship, through the council, under section 4, you will see that the CAO reviews and approves any procedures related to this policy, and directors and managers carry out the policy based on established procedures. And so that is the reference, the trigger for us to follow those rules. And, regulations, guidelines, standards, all that good stuff. So that's where those responsibilities, again, the action orientation of this policy, as well as the clarity of language there. So we think that's covered in that section.
Okay, thank you for that. Other comments? Councillor Demota?
I couldn't write down Catherine's sentence fast enough, but did it include reasonably safe condition with the word both for the protection and of the public?
If I may paraphrase, you want to council through the Councillor Demota. If we were to just highlight the very beginning of the standard section, as I understand, Councillor Waxer's recommendation, and for an amendment, we start at 2 outline and go to the end of ensure, just strike that away, and the rest of it remains as written, if I understand correctly.
Okay. I didn't want to get too nitpicky, because it's such a long sentence, and for me, I think that there should be a comma after condition. So that safe condition, comma, both for the protection. I don't know, that's just me, because it's a really long sentence. Thank you.
Your worship, through the Councillor Demota, we will certainly ensure that the grammar is correct as it goes. I believe this may be one of those times that applies the optional comma or the Oxford comma rule. So I'm not sure, but I will check my grammar and we will verify that we get.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wilson?
Just with your comments earlier, Mr. Reid, about administration, following this, so like administration procedures following this this policy, then so you would then have sledding hills procedures, playgrounds, etc. But what would happen in the situation of the last comma, etc. So is there? I was okay with it being etc. and skiing would be included in etc. But now, if there is administration policy, of course, to follow this policy, should we not have, say, cross-country skiing? Because that, I think, could be a pretty viable sport to take place in, the in our facilities.
Your worship, maybe I'll take Councillor Wilson's question, since the review and approval procedures for the policy is the CEO responsibility. I think we appreciated the discussion that council had before about not limiting ourselves just to the skating policy or fields policy. But it probably becomes, and so the definition is fairly broad. I think the etc. allows for other things. So if at some stage somebody comes forward and says that we need to have a disc golf course on municipal lands and council supports this disc golf course on municipal lands, the policy would cover it. We would obviously establish procedures. I don't think we need to specify each type of sport that could be conducted on municipal lands. I don't know that, and if the municipality established a municipality or another party established a cross-country skiing facility on municipal lands, then we would absolutely have a procedure for that. Same as we would if there was a dodgeball facility on municipal lands, we would have a procedure related to that. So I don't think council needs to worry about specifying each potential recreational use that could happen. On municipal lands. Certainly, if the new use comes up and there's a need for the municipality to establish a procedure to ensuring that we are mitigating municipal liability and protecting the public, then we will establish a procedure to do that.
You don't want to leave out the pickleball.
If I might then, on this same topic, you, Councillor Wilson, were dealing with the definition under section 5, etc. I struggle with the definition, which to me seems a bit circular. Outdoor recreation facilities means any outdoor recreation facility. It begs the question, what is a facility? So I wonder whether we might consider saying outdoor recreation facilities means any outdoor recreation opportunity on lands owned and operated by the municipality of Jasper, but including but not limited to all the rest of it. And I struggle a bit with this because of the reference to green spaces. So there may be green spaces that have nothing to do with recreational opportunities. Potentially community gardens. I don't know why we would even attempt to say that that's a recreational opportunity, although maybe gardening is a recreational pursuit for some. What about parts of the Snapes Hill area exclusive of the potential tobogganing terrain? So where all the trees were planted. Does that green space become an outdoor recreation facility because it's in this definition? And if it does, what sort of outdoor recreation do we envisage for that green space?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the rest of the council. So I'm getting excellent notes here from the support crew. It is important to recognize that owned and operated implies there's more than just a space, and that is exactly what we mean. So when we talk about Snakes Hill specifically and that area you're referencing, if we were to put a trail through there, that trail is now a recreation facility. And so that trail will meet the standards for building it and for maintaining it and ensuring that it's safe. The rest of the grass and trees and all the rest of that is just green space that is not a facility. And so that would extend to Robson Park when it is the World Tree. We are going to put that World Tree up. It is going to be an amenity or a facility that we create. So that World Tree will be safe according to the best practices we can find and develop and maintain. But the grass around it is only maintained in the safety level of grass around it. And so it is the fact that we develop something, that we create something, that we make something that turns it into a facility. But you're correct. Every piece of green space we have is ours to manage. And as a green space does get managed to that level. I hope maybe too many words, but I think the clarity that I was hoping is there, but did I get to your point, sir?
I will dwell on it more. It's an adequate answer, so I thank you for that. I understand your reasoning. I still wonder whether it commits us to something that is beyond scope. Standards in particular. I don't know if there are standards for green space that is just raw land, where we have done nothing, although we allowed Mr. Frechette to plant and water a bunch of trees. But are there other standards that we would conceive of that? Does it fit within this policy or not? Or does it only fit if we build, say, a trail? I'm not quite sure how what the end line of the scope is of what falls within this policy.
Your worship, if I may, although this isn't referenced in the definition and potentially could be, a casual look says that a common definition of facility would be a place, amenity, or piece of equipment provided for a particular purpose. So Snakes Hill, as it sits today, was not provided for any particular purpose. The municipality lays a trail across Snakes Hill. That trail has been provided for a specific purpose. The municipality allows the establishment of a sledding hill that has been provided for a particular purpose. So I think that, and so while that isn't included in the definition, it could be, outdoor recreation facilities means a place, amenity, or piece of equipment provided by for a particular purpose on lands owned and operated by the municipality chapter, including the public. We could do that. And administration, I think, in the absence of that even would default to that. It has to be provided for a particular purpose. So a green space that exists as just a green space is just a green space. Until somebody lays a track for cross-country skiing on it, now it's being provided for a particular purpose, and we would need to have a standard of how to deal with that. So I hope that provides clarity. We could add that to the definition, but I don't believe that administration would take an overly expansive view of this and try to create a bunch of processes and procedures around things that are not provided for a particular purpose. It's when we can see as administration that we put something in place to do a specific thing, then we better, we've caused an action to happen or supported an action to happen, and then we have a responsibility to have a procedure in place for it. So it's that sort of active effort on behalf of the municipality in an area where we haven't taken a action, then likely we would establish a procedure.
I appreciate that. From my own perspective, I would prefer the more limited language as you suggested. Otherwise, I think the definition outdoor recreation facilities means every green space we have. And we can limit that, I think, just in the definition section.
So your worship, then a suggestion could be outdoor recreation facilities means a place, amenity, or piece of equipment provided for a particular purpose, owned and operated by the municipality of Jasper, including the number 2. So really just inserting that language in the start there to define what it so is.
As I say, that only suits my desire. It may not suit council, so we'll come back to that momentarily. Councillor Demota.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the discussion and the thought of going in that direction. And when I think about green spaces, I think about that the triangle parcel of land that's gated outside of Ball Diamond Sea, where there's often different activities that get booked in there. Same with Robson Park. Sometimes different community members will book something there, or the municipality puts something on there for other community members. So I don't know how big it needs to be or how specific it needs to be. Just those things to consider.
Are there any other proposed changes to the draft outdoor recreation facilities policy? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I've been listening intensely, and this section here has been, when I read it initially, I had challenges with it, and I wanted to listen to individuals. I think this section almost needs to reflect that administration will ensure that operating standards are in place before any recreational facility is put to use. And that's a proactive statement. Whereas, that right now, as I read the standards, is that it's intended to do that, but it doesn't say that. And I would like to see proactive language that prior to any recreation facility, whatever it may be, cross-country skiing was a great example, that standards are in place before we open anything up to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. I see Councillor Wilson has his hand up, but I would like to, before we leave this, in case Councillor Wilson is leaving it, is there any comment from administration with respect to Councillor Melnick's comments? You don't feel compelled, but if you wanted to respond, now would be a good time.
Thank you, Worship. To Councilor Melnick, I understand the intent, and again, there's nothing wrong with adding more clarity. What we've, again, on our administrative role, we know what this means, but there's nothing wrong with adding another sentence that gives everyone the assurance that it really is a proactive positioning. Yeah, that would mimic exactly what we do anyway. So it's an excellent an addition. Again, I'm not going to argue against it for sure.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wilson.
I would argue against it, only because it sounds like it's restrictive of any type of new use of a space, and those spaces are there for sport and for recreation and invention of new stuff. Or like I'm going to go and play disc golf, but I'm just going to throw a frisbee across the field and use a marker across the field. Right? So I don't think we need to have policy in place to go out and even cross country ski around the field. It seems that would be very restrictive.
Councillor, Director Reed.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councilor Wilson. That is an excellent point of clarity. This policy does not apply to the actions that you just described. So a resident taking a frisbee down and creating his own disc golf course in our park to play disc golf and practice. The only impact we would have is, if that park already booked or what have you, and whether or not the safety of other users was interfered with, we would deal with that as well. But what Councilor Melnick is speaking of, and this policy speaks of, what I'm understanding you all been saying is if I was to create, or if administration were to take direction from council to create a disc golf course, is an excellent example. We would only create that disc golf course after we've done our due diligence, have our procedures administratively prepared and ready to go, have done all our research. So for us to create a recreation facility, an outdoor recreation facility, we would do all the work as clarified by Councilor Melnick. For what we would call ad hoc or impromptu recreation events, that's what parks are for. And so you're right, but we wouldn't do any work in that case. We wouldn't create a municipal outdoor recreation facility because you and your son decided to go play disc golf one day. We wouldn't all of a sudden jump into and make a new policy for that, right? That's just casual recreation use of our facility, of our park rather, which is exactly what they're for. So I think those are two distinct things, the way I'm reading them and hearing what you guys are talking. So I think your point is valid and allowed, but I think Councilor Melnick's point is valid and allowed from what I'm, if I understand.
Thank you, both. Councillor Waxer.
I really liked the addition of the definition, but I wondered if we added that, if we would need to take the word green spaces out of the definition, because it seems at odds to me.
Your Worship, through the Councilor Waxer. So green space is still a facility. Like we still have standards to maintain the public green spaces. They are various, depending on what level of work we put into developing it, depends what standard it gets built to. So the fact that green spaces remains in here is only, again, for that clarity, that actually there isn't a space we have that we wouldn't have to contemplate what its use is and have it to the appropriate public standard for that use. The Snake Hills tree area is a good example. The public standard for public green spaces, you just take care of that space. Let's say a tree was going to fall on someone, we would have an obligation to repair that or take that hazard away. And so that is in one of our administrative procedures is for hazard trees, as an example. And so it's okay to stay from an administrative point of view.
I appreciate the clarity.
Any further points to be made with respect to the draft outdoor recreation facilities policy? I am going to attempt to state what I think I have heard before I call for a motion, because I'm going to assume that there might be a motion to approve the draft policy subject to changes as discussed today. So I just want to confirm where we got with that discussion. So firstly, with respect to item 3, standards, I understand through Councillor Waxer that her proposal would be that the paragraph would read that municipal outdoor recreation facilities are maintained in a reasonably safe condition, perhaps a comma, both for the protection of the public and to mitigate liability to the municipality to the extent possible. And then with Councillor Melnick's addition, there might be another comma, with standards to be established prior to making facilities available for public use. Does that capture what councillors think they heard today? Director Reed.
Only, that is definitely what I heard for section 3. The definition section also had an additional recommendation from COE.
Yeah.
You're getting that?
I'll
My
come back to
apologies.
that. I'm trying to clarify potential points of confusion one at a time. So if we're just talking about 3, shorten it and then lengthen it. This is kind of where we got to. And if council is happy with that, I will move to the definition section, but is there concern, Councillor Demota?
Well, I was just wondering if Councillor Wilson was satisfied with what Councillor Melnick was attempting to add. So I wasn't sure if you were opposed or not. I'm kind of on the fence with that.
Sorry, that was the addition to the standards? Okay, I would prefer to hear it again.
With standards to be established prior to making facilities available to public use. So that, again, we have to jump ahead to the definition section, but as I understood from administration, the concern that you raised, that is extemporaneous use of lands, is fine. It's only when we put something there, when we develop something, set a ski track or put up frisbee golf, then we would have standards. But if you want to go down on your own and ski around the ball diamond, you can do that. I mean, they are not the same activity. There is a different standard if we, as a municipality, provide either a program or an enhanced facility, is the point that was being made by administration. Go ahead, Councillor
So to
Wilson.
speak to that, you said ski track, so packing down snow, then makes it a facility that has to be and then that probably can be shut down because of the snow not in proper quality. You know, I think this is too much. And I don't support that.
Councillor Melnick, did I see your hand?
You did. Thank you, Mayor. Ireland, I just wanted to affirm that you captured my sentiment that we want to be proactive, have standards in place, open the facility, know what we're doing. And I appreciate Councillor Wilson's. I may have misheard when he was talking about cross-country skiing. I think he's right. If somebody chooses to go cross-country skiing in Centennial Park, that's on them. But if we track set, that's on us.
I believe that for the time being, but we will come back. I will turn to section 5 definitions. And as I now understand the outcome of our discussions, that section has been proposed to be changed to read, outdoor recreation facilities means a place, amenity, or piece of equipment provided for a particular purpose, owned and operated by the municipality of Jasper, and includes, but is not limited to, ice surfaces, sports field, green spaces, playgrounds, sledding hills, bike and skate parks, outdoor court surfaces, etc. So is there any councillor with concerns about that change to the definition section? All right, it sounds like we have consensus on one change to item 5 of the definition. The outstanding matter then is Article 3, Section 3. And I could call for a vote on that if there are councillors. I'm sorry?
Separate one.
Yep. If there is a councillor prepared to make a motion to direct an amendment to Article 3, we can deal with that, and then we can get to the overall approval or not of the proposed policy. Councillor Waxer? Okay. You're making a motion.
Okay, that the changes proposed to the Article 3 standards be accepted as suggested.
All right, well, I will give you the wording that I
Thank
had
you.
written, and you can just say, yes, we will adopt that,
Thank
but
you.
I'll get it on the record. That Article 3 be amended to read that municipal outdoor recreation facilities are maintained in a reasonably safe condition, both for the protection of the public and to mitigate liability to the municipality to the extent possible, with standards to be established prior to making facilities available for public use. So that is your motion to amend Article 3 in that fashion? Thank you. Any further debate on that motion?
No debate.
Councillor Demota?
Just to add a little levity, but not to mock the proceedings. I'm a big fan of using semicolons when necessary, and I don't know if there's an Oxford semicolon, but I think it would be good to have it after possible. But I'd be okay with that. Thank you.
And I will say that I paused only slightly where I thought there should be a comma, and a more pronounced pause where I thought there should be a semicolon.
All right. I'm reading your lingo. 15 years later.
All right, well, I'm sorry, Councillor Wilson, about to call the question.
Again, I find this, restrictive of just like sledding. We're not offering a sledding facility, yet we're gonna have sledding, like sledding is exactly the same thing as going out and skiing around and pushing down snow. Yet there's gonna be a sledding, administration, procedure. So I don't know, I find like we're trying to put too many parameters on activities that are meant to just be free and enjoyable.
Thank you for that. I will turn in a moment to administration. My view is that we need not think that the standards will be overwhelming and negative. Maybe the standard is that if we're going to have a toboggan hill, we first sign it that says, use at your own risk, helmets recommended, or something. It might be minimal, but the objective is to mitigate liability against the municipality. That's one of our standards. And so how do we do that? It doesn't mean that we over control the ability to sled, But maybe we put up some signage to say, yeah, go ahead and sled here, but it's on you if you get hurt in a silly way. It could be that simple. I turned to administration that indicated a desire to respond.
Yeah, I just want to ensure that council has the confidence that administration wouldn't interpret. And I don't, I think we have to spend really hard on an interpretation of this that would limit the public's ability to use and enjoy local public spaces. I think that the active part here is that the municipality needs to take an active role in establishing that use. If some resident or if some person comes and uses a space on municipal lands for some type of use that we haven't prescribed or directed to happen there, then they're just using the public space. That's okay. If we go up and put up a sign saying sled here at your own risk, we are acknowledging people are sliding there and we may need to do some procedures, maybe more or less of it, but really the public can still use municipal outdoor spaces of all types in the ways that they, those inventive ways. Basically, this is not intended to be limiting. It is intended to say that where the municipality causes an action to happen in a specific place, but by our intentional efforts, this is how we're sliding down. We better have a procedure in place for how that's being touched. Somebody starts sliding down the side of the hill, we may need to look at that and say, well, is that a safe use that there is a need to act to ensure that it can be safe? But it will not be used as a tool to prevent people from finding ways to use our spaces. It would take a pretty unusual interpretation of what the policy be supposed to say here for any administration to act on it.
Any further debate? I'm going to ask a question of administration before I vote. And it is specific to the bike skills park. It seems to me that would not be covered right now, but I don't even think it's our land right now, is it? And I don't think that we provided that opportunity, although we perhaps allowed it to be provided. So is it covered? Is it not covered by this policy?
Your Worship, I'll jump in because I was here with council. The council made a specific motion to allow that development to go forward on that parcel of land. So in that case, the municipality, through a council motion, said, yes, we endorse this use, and council actively approved a user agreement with the cycling association. So that's a specific case where there was specific action of the municipality that allowed the establishment of that use to happen on that land. And so we need to have a procedure in that area. So that's a good example. Yes, it's on our land. Yes, there was a specific action. Now, people have been riding their bikes on parcels GC to GA for some time. We didn't have a specific procedure for that. Right? We never stopped them necessarily. Maybe we stopped them if they're riding against a barrier or something. But so on the bike skills park, there's a specific action of municipality. We should have a procedure related to that. And thankfully, the user agreement actually outlines roles and responsibilities and who does what, and maintenance schedule and everything else. So in that case, yes, the municipality will have a responsibility to make sure that they have some procedure in place to ensure that that area is maintained in a safe manner. Responsibility for that, somewhat, because of our contract user agreement, lies with the bike folks, but we also have a regular inspection schedule.
I raised that and just reflectively, I was concerned that that new facility was in use in the absence of signage. And it's a minimal standard that says use at your own risk, but it seemed to me it was being used at somebody's risk before there was any signage. And that is why I'm in favor of making the policy clear that we set the standards first before we open it. And I'm not sure that we did that in the case of the bike skills park. And for a temporary time, I think the municipality was exposed. So it's a concern for me.
You got a thumbs up from the council.
Councillor Melnick, was that simply an indication of support, or did you wish to speak?
Support and the intent of my amendment or my suggestion to this policy.
All right, I will return to debate. Is there any further debate with respect to Councillor Waxer's motion to amend Article 3 standards? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I just want to say that I do support the motion after that example. Thank you.
Right, I will call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? There is one opposed. That is carried. Might I then, unless there are any other items to change in the draft policy, might I have a motion that council rescind policy D014 municipal field use policy and policy D015 outdoor skating surface policy and approve policy D114 outdoor recreation facilities as amended? And we will know what the amendments are because we specifically read them into the record. So do I have a councillor prepared to make that motion? Councillor Waxer, thank you. Again, we'll open that for debate. I see no hands. I'll call the questions. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, cemetery bylaw. Councillor Waxer.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. I've seen a variety of letters and Facebook or social media posts about some of the changes or some of the some actions by administration, and which are supported by our current cemetery bylaw. And I've taken the time to read the cemetery bylaw a number of times, and I fully understand the rules, but maybe not the reasons for the rules. And so I just wondered if we could have a brief discussion about that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. I appreciate that there was limited notice of this, and it is understandable if administration needs some time to prepare. I see though that Director Greathead is here and I presume for this purpose. So if you'd like to speak to it, that's fine.
Sure, Your Worship. I think, administration can in a limited manner. And then if council need more detail, maybe a motion to refer to committee or something like that to give administration more time to gather additional information. Mr. Greathead can speak to sort of the operational impacts and what the team needs to do to maintain that. But I'll just make the observation that the bylaw is a long-standing bylaw of the municipality. Administration appreciates that this is always a sensitive matter. And Jasper's not alone in this type of issue being the subject of public discussion. And so I think administration's overall intent is to ensure that people are treated equitably and in the same manner. I should actually say equally, rather than just equitably, but equally in the same manner. And that's the intent of the bylaw. I think Mr. Greathead can speak to just sort of the operational impacts of what administration is trying to manage on the site. And there's those sort of very objective elements of, we need to do this and that in the cemetery. And there's also the subjective challenge. And I think the bylaw tries to set a standard. And if at some time council or the community decided that standard, the subjective parts of that standard were, cumbersome or inappropriate, then you could direct us to change the bylaw to match the community's subjective desires about aesthetics and everything else. But Mr. Greathead can speak to the operational side of what administration needs to do to manage that physical space. John?
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. We served notice to the caretakers of the burials and interments at our cemetery, advising that we're going to do a cleanup, and we're going to do a more thorough cleanup and try and restore the standards that were meant to be maintained within the cemetery. And knowing that this had become a very talked about issue, I just wanted to check with, when we reviewed and discussed some of the concerns we've noticed over the years. And I think our approach has been balanced. We've had numerous calls when people are about to have a service and ask them to do something about the clutter on a neighboring plot or stones. And over the years, it just wasn't enforced. So to be fair and to make sure that everyone has the equal quiet contemplation, which the cemetery is intended for, we were going to restore everything as this year at the end of the month, as prescribed by the bylaw, and maintain that going forward. So that way we will do our annual tidy up. And that's, I would say though, having served notice, I would say the feedback we've gotten is also balanced. We have some people that have voluntarily complied. I would say, Emma, would we be at probably 30% have voluntarily complied at this point, which we haven't heard a word from. We have also asked if they can't make it, what's going to be done with the items that are left on the grave sites. And we purchased a shed that we're going to be constructing this next week, and we're going to be gathering up all of the mementos and storing them in bankers boxes so that the family members can get what was left on the site. They're not just going to be discarded. So we're walking into this with some care and some diligence on it, but we're also looking to maintain the standards as set out by the bylaw. So I'm available for questions, but I guess that's really all I would have to report on how we've got to this point so far.
Thank you for that, Mr. Greathead. Councillor Wax, I'll turn to you first if you have any questions arising.
Thank you for that answer, and I was not, I have every confidence in administration was following up. I think what I needed to understand maybe more is, and realizing that administration may not know the answer as to why some rules are in place. Some of them are obvious in terms of the aesthetics, and we spoke to that about quiet place for contemplation. But some of the things we've heard about is some places can have monuments that stand up, and some can only have lying down. I just didn't I didn't know the ins and outs and why some of those standards were in place.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Waxer. Right now, there's probably 15 or so homemade mementos, kind of bent metal ornaments to hang wind chimes on, as well as homemade crucifixes and other items that aren't compliant to our monuments bylaw. So those as well, we were making sure that everything complies to the bylaw as it stands today. We're not going after anything that obviously is historic, but anything that is, not in compliance with the bylaw, that's what we're going to be removing at this point. So most of the stones going in recent times are the flat mounted stones, as opposed to ones that step up. And again, it goes through the permitting process when people apply for a monument. So we do have a record of what was applied for and what's been added to on each site.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead. Councillor Wilson?
This question about how often does operations send out a letter to well, I guess families of the deceased, that in the, like, is it a yearly thing, or it sounds like this is like a larger movement to getting compliance with the bylaw, or is there a yearly cleanup with letters going on?
As far as I know, Councillor Wilson, this is really the first time, and that's one of the sentiments that I get back. It's been fine for 12 years, and this is the first time we're doing this. Again, our approach on this was balanced. We get equal numbers of concern for people asking us to remove, stuff from neighboring plots and that. Our intent is to restore the cemetery as it should be going forward this year, and we'll be a little more vigilant on it going forward and making sure that things are compliant and just not let go for years and years on it. And I believe that's part of the problem why we're seeing so much pushback on this at the current time. And again, I'd rather phrase it as not saying so much pushback. Really, I feel that's balanced, and it's understandable that we were having a little bit of resistance. But again, I think we're getting some pretty decent voluntary compliance with the letter, and a lot of families have contacted me saying, I won't be able to make it in time. We'll have things to be cared for, and committed to that.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for that. And just to follow up, I guess as well, I'm not sure what the procedure is when somebody is applying for a plot or after the death of a loved one, do we direct families to the cemetery bylaw, and is it pretty kind of cut and dry that, okay, this is what is acceptable and this is what is expected from the cemetery?
Councillor Wilson, currently it is, and that's what we're doing, and it has been done historically where when there's an application, I believe the whole application package contains the links to our bylaw as well as a hard copy of what's expected and what people are agreeing to.
Any further discussion on this topic? Councillor DeMola?
Well, I can understand over time, there are sensitivities because of, it being a cemetery and people have family members there. So, when you get new managers in place and they have expertise in certain areas, and I'm not going to say anything about why now because I've heard that, but we've had certain other circumstances within the community that needs to be taken care of. And I'm not saying that this wasn't high on the priority list, but when you do have a continual amount of concerns when there are burials and stuff, it hits the radar and says, okay, well, maybe it's time to clean this up. And I can totally side with administration wanting to go in this direction, and I'm supporting the letter. I understand that there are sensitivities, and the people that are directly affected, are going to feel, a little disheartened, and I totally understand that. When it comes to the social media side of things, it's just a lot of the times we have to kind of put it in our own filter and understand that a lot of the times on social media, when people are being active and making comments, that they're not speaking for the voice of the people. And if we need to go and review this bylaw later on, and for me, I always try to filter it through, is it good for the community as a whole? What are the costs behind it? Which I don't think are really relevant here, but is it the right thing to do? And I think at this point, it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeMola. Anything else? it occurs to me in this discussion that the cemetery is a municipal facility. Last year, as part of the orientation package, councillors were invited to view a number of municipal facilities, but the cemetery has never been included. And if council determines that it is worth reviewing the cemetery bylaw and looking at the standards, it occurs to me that it might be useful to go to the cemetery with perhaps Mr. Greathead or somebody from staff to better educate councillors about both the operational challenges that you face and aesthetic issues that arise. And we've never had that opportunity. And on my own visits to the cemetery, it is not usually with that in mind that I go. And so if council is interested and if it doesn't impact too much on staff capacity, I think an opportunity for councillors to take a tour of the cemetery and have some of these challenges pointed out to us might be really helpful before we get into a review of the cemetery bylaw, if we choose to go that way. Well, so I just throw that out there as an observation. But I guess it would have to be soon if we were going to do it. Councillor Demoto.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit more clarity to the bylaw itself, and maybe a question that came up here, under section 5 of the bylaw, 5.3, there is a section there that says that the municipal manager shall each year on or after October 31st remove items from plots and tablets and place such items into storage for 30 days. So it's been there since 2006, and it's not something that is being done overnight as a surgeons to do a mass cleanup, even though that's what's before us. And I think before things get too out of hand, it's probably better time to do it now than later.
Councillor Waxer, you raised the topic, so I give you the last word.
I just wanted to. Oh, sorry.
With exception, Your Honor.
My apologies, Councillor Melnick. So I will defer to you and then go back to Councillor Waxer.
Thank you. If there's an opportunity to tour the cemetery, I think I would be incumbent on all of us to do that with two things in mind: the current situation, but also to understand and appreciate this is a historic resource of the founders of our community. And there are many, many individuals who we see names on streets and on signage and have contributed to our history. And I think if we do that tour, we should be going in with a very open eye to appreciate that we are respecting not just those who have come before us and those who have recently deceased, but where we have come from and how we continue to celebrate our history here. I certainly would love to be able to participate in any tour and appreciate the operational side of it, but I also want to understand how we can continue to improve and ensure that this resource will be the same 25 and 50 years from now.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. And I will return now to Councillor Waxer.
Thank you. I too would very much support the concept of having a council tour with bylaw in hand of the cemetery. And again, to repeat what I said earlier, I had no question about the administration needing to clean up. I think what I was really seeking to understand was what were the rules when this bylaw was crafted in 2006, as to why some people could have a monument that stood up and some could only have them lying down. So so when I was approached by a member of the public, I was have an articulate answer. That was my reason for questioning. So I appreciate all the efforts you made to keep the cemetery to be in great shape. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And so are you, Councillor Waxer, satisfied with the discussion we've had today? And is there any need to bring this back to a subsequent meeting?
My only question would be, do we need a motion in order to arrange for a tour as suggested?
I don't think there's a need for a motion. If administration, Mr. Greathead in particular, probably can propose a time when he might be available, and then councillors who wish to attend and can attend should go. And when you said with bylaw in hand, I presume you didn't mean an escort from a bylaw, but armed with the actual bylaw.
That's correct.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll accommodate whenever council wishes. Maybe early afternoon is probably the best time to go through an inspection anyways. And I think that we could be in and out within a half an hour. If that suits council, just let me know, and I can respond by email and set something up.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead. That completes agenda item 6, new business. There are no notices of motion. So agenda item 7 is complete. Agenda item 8, councillor reports. Councillor Keller-Hambie.
Yesterday, I went to Oakland to attend the Evergreen meeting. We have hired a new financial officer and human resources director. And I took a tour of the new Parkland Lodge. Very nice. Plans to go ahead with Wildwood Senior Lodge on the table, and also we're continuing forward with the lodge in Grand Cache, Victor Lake Lodge, the Indigenous Lodge. The plans are going forward, and it's amazing. When I returned last night, I attended the open house for community features at the Robson House, and there was about 25-30 people in attendance. A lot of people that have come and worked over the years with community features.
Thank you, Councillor Keller-Hambie. Other reports? Councillor Wilson.
Last Thursday, we were in Hinton for the Westdale Head Regional Management Authority meeting, and and so probably the biggest thing on the agenda in the last couple meetings was that Greenview County has requested to be part of the authority. The board has voted in favor of it, yet given and myself will be bring that to the board to vote on, or to the municipal, to the council to vote on to approve that in a coming meeting.
Thank you for that. Councillor DeMora.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last Wednesday, as an alternate for Councillor Keller-Hambie, I attended the early learning and childcare community conversation, which was quite eye-opening to me. I don't have children, so it's good to get a different view on and understanding of what people are doing in the community. And I recommend that alternates for any committee or community conversation try to be present at least for the first one with the actual design designated representative, because I think that when you have to fill in, you're not doing it from scratch, and I got a lot of benefit from being there. So we had an update on programs at the Aquatic Center. They're still looking for lifeguards / instructors. People are excited to be back without restrictions, and so there's a high demand on lessons with not a lot of instructors to facilitate students. So we only have 4 full-time staff, I believe, there. And still looking for people to apply. There's a program called the Circle of Security Parenting Program, and it's set up for young parents. It provides help to grow relationships and children grow together. The program is 8 weeks long, it's free, and it's always full. So the indoor play group is starting up again in November. They're on Wednesdays and Fridays from 10 to 12. And early childhood had a meeting with the Hinton Center, and they have several family and mental health therapists there. And our intercommunity collaboration has been working well with trauma support. It's a valuable tool for our community, being able to refer people to that center. And through our funding, we've been able to help people afford the support. So that was great to hear and see. Ultimately not really focusing on early learning, but impacts families. Settlement Services are offering a program for winter for new Canadians. There's a tax info session coming up to help new Canadians know what to expect and how to navigate income tax processes, which I thought was a pretty neat thing, because you don't think about those things when you're used to doing that every year. So there is a bit of challenge getting new families into early childhood programming. I think new Canadian families, and it's been identified recently that there is a demand for programming from the JPL staff on Jasper Park Law. So there's going to be a member from costs addressing that, and I thought that was great. So that's my update. Hopefully it wasn't too long, but thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Other reports? Councillor, the guy on holidays wants to report about the weather and the surf, I suppose.
Now we know.
There we go. I think I finally found the mute button. I will be attending a Jasper Yellowhead Historical Society meeting later today. And yes, reporting from Maui, the birds are in the background, and it is nice to be elsewhere. But I will say I do need my alternate to attend the recreation meeting tomorrow, community conversations. As I will not be able to do that, I'll be elsewhere on the island.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Who is that alternate?
I believe that's me, and if I can't make it, then I will. I think Councillor Waxer is offered a friendly hand with that. I'll check my calendar. Thank you for the last minute notice, Councillor Melnick.
All right, thank you. I will report briefly. I was all set to defer to Councillor Hall, but Councillor Hall and I attended last Wednesday evening in this room a meet and greet with Indigenous partners. We have Director Reed to thank for that, working in collaboration with Parks Canada. They were hosting, I think, the Indigenous Forum over 2 days, and so they made an opportunity to allow councillors an opportunity to start building relationships. It was a really successful step along the path of reconciliation. We started with a sharing circle where the speaking stick was handed around and everyone had an opportunity to speak, and it's a good start for relationship building, and will continue. In that same context, in my other capacity, I have been required, along with every other member of the Law Society of Alberta, to take Indigenous cultural training. And I just completed a course that is fairly intensive. I think 10 or a dozen videos, most about 20 minutes long, some shorter, some as short as about 10 minutes. It was exam based, so we had to answer questions at the end, but others might not. And I'm going to look into whether that particular offering can be made available to the public and to councillors in particular. Well, I appreciate that we have just gone through cultural training in this room that is supported by our provincial municipal association. I found the training that I got through something called The Path, and it's put out by Envision at a national level, was exceptionally good. So I will see whether that can be something that is available for councillors who might be interested. It really was eye-opening and looked at things from a legal perspective, but a lot of this is rights-based, and so the legal perspective is really important. So I will see whether I can share more of that with you in the coming days or weeks. And then secondly, I will report that Mr. Given and I met today with our counterparts from Banff and Canmore just to position our ongoing initiative for provincial recognition and funding for tourism-based communities in light of changes at the provincial level, and in particular anticipating the appointment of new cabinet ministers either Friday or early next week. So that matter is still in progress, and I think we have now committed to weekly Zoom meetings of that group just to try and stay on top of things for the foreseeable future as things at the provincial level continue to unfold. Those are my reports. If there is nothing else, we can turn to agenda item 9, upcoming events. NEPMA tomorrow evening, 5 to 7 at the Wicked Cup. Our organizational meeting next Tuesday following committee of the whole. An intergovernmental meeting the afternoon of October 27th, which will be Thursday. The Alberta Recreation and Parks Association conferences in town next week as well. I know it was raised, apart from staff, I'm not aware of any councillors having registered, but I presume staff will be at that. And our budget presentations, November 15th and 16th. And I was speaking with Mr. Given earlier today. I understand that it's likely those will be daytime sessions this year, although I don't know whether that decision is firm.
Your worship, certainly with the budget administration is discussing that. I'm going to work with Director Malinchuk. We are coordinating with external groups, thanks to Ms. Acorn, to make presentations during the day, the morning of the 15th. So all of our external groups are looking to support. We'll present that morning. Then we'll go into the afternoon, the administration starting presentations, and following continuing presentations the next day. So council should be tentatively working for ways to do that. And of course, all of that will be recorded and posted so that any other members of the public that can't attend during the day will be able to see those council discussions recorded and posted to YouTube.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Just to add to the list, most of this will be self-evident, but perhaps not. November 4th, the Chamber of Commerce is holding the Ambassador Awards at Forest Park Hotel. November 11th, of course, is Remembrance Day, and I'm presuming it might be at the Activity Center, as it often is, although I think last year it was conducted at the Cenotaph, so stay tuned for that. I have yet to hear about No Stone Left Alone, but we were the first municipality in Alberta outside of Edmonton to host one of those, and we've continued to do so. So I assume that we will get notice for those who are available of an opportunity to meet at the cemetery, probably for the No Stone Left Alone event. And November 12th, we have been invited, I think all the council has received an invitation to the Vet Fest at the Royal Canadian Legion on the evening of November 12th. Are there any other upcoming events not on the list of which any councillor is aware that should be brought to the attention of all of council? If not, I am open to a motion to adjourn. Councillor Wilson. The motion being that there being no further business, the regular meeting of October 18th, 2022 be adjourned at 2:51 p.m. All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Melnick is even in favor.
I think
All right.
move to the patio.
Enjoy your afternoon snorkel. Thank you very much. Councillor Melnick for joining us.
Don't let now.
And thank you all members of the public who attended by Zoom platform today. We are adjourned.